15 months in prison for taking part in a peaceful climate protest.
Good evening everyone on this lovely, sunny Adelaide evening. We're here for a serious protest about Violet Coco.
With 8 months on parole.
Violet, as you will have heard, has been given 15-month sentence for a peaceful protest.
Before we get started though, I want to acknowledge that
and in that time of 15 months, the first 8 months before her appeal, she has been refused bail and will be in prison. A great turnout here tonight in Adelaide on the Parliament House steps. This protest has been initiated by Uni Students for Climate Action and joined by other organisations including Extinction Rebellion, coming to you live from Adelaide this evening.
But before we do, I just want to say a few more brief words about why we're here. We're here in solidarity with someone who should never have been arrested in the first place. Violet Coco is just the latest victim of a whole wave of anti-protest laws being rolled out across the country and overseas. But let's remind ourselves of the stakes here. In the time it took Violet to block a road, the same government handed over $500,000 in subsidies to the fossil fuel industry. The same companies responsible for climate destruction. The climate crisis we know is accelerating. And our not so new Labor government is pushing on with over 100 new coal, oil and gas projects.
I want to ask a question.
Here in South Australia, we have a government that's declared a climate emergency one day. And the next day, as those of us know who blockaded the oil and gas conference recently, it's extending an invitation to the fossil fuel industry of the world, to the nuclear industry of the world, to make our state home.
No one touches this. Stand eliminated, please, may keep your hands off our children.
Dominic Perrottet, the New South Wales Premier, says that climate activists are terrorists, putting our way of life at risk. Violet's imprisonment, he said, was pleasing to see. People have a right to protest as long as you don't disrupt anything. In other words, you can protest as long as your polite is ineffective, polite and doesn't disrupt business as usual. And meanwhile, there are still hundreds of thousands of people whose way of life has been disrupted in the floods in Lismore and the bushfire crisis. So clearly I think, got to say, the justice system isn't a justice system at all. It's punishing activists on our side and protecting the rights of the fossil fuel industry to keep making money while the planet burns. So our first speaker today is Anna Abramovich. Anna's a climate activist, has been president of the SLC at Adelaide Uni this year, and has been led another really important fight against one of our other civil liberties being taken away, the right to abortion. So please make her welcome.
People now welcoming the first speaker at this protest.
Thanks, Nix. Oh, that's loud. Okay, so first I wanted to start by acknowledging that we are meeting on Indigenous land, and this land was stolen and never ceded, and always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
We are
this
here
is a
on
fact
Ghana
that
country.
The Labor state governments all around Australia do not give a fuck about. Here in South Australia, the Labor state government is trying to push nuclear on Aboriginal land, and that is something that I think we should say shame to and absolutely stand against. Shame. So
some beautiful chalking here.
Nick's mentioned it, but I think it is worth acknowledging
by Dots for
just
Democracy.
The severity of
Welcome,
the punishment
Caroline, to
that
this
Violet
broadcast.
Coco has received for blocking a single lane of traffic for less than half an hour in Sydney. Over a year in prison is the sentence, and she's being hit with increasingly, I think, like vindictive fines to do with vomiting after being fed non-vegan food, fines that are really excessive and I think are also meant to intimidate her. this is the sort of punishment I think you'd expect really to see. Someone getting over a year in prison for peacefully protesting in a dictatorship. It's kind of stunning that this is happening in wealthy, so-called democratic Australia. So, I think this is not a healthy democracy confident of its ability to provide a decent life for all. We've seen, whether it's the health crisis, climate change, rampant state racism or cost of living, our state and federal governments are not willing to do what's necessary to guarantee a decent life for all. And while it's the New South Wales Liberals who are locking up Violet, like I said before, the Labor Party are not our friends. The legislation in New South Wales was passed with the support of the Labor opposition.
Welcome, Andy, to this live stream. Lovely to have your company.
And in Queensland and Victoria, with state Labor governments, similar laws have already been passed. So shame on the Labor Party as well. I was pretty disappointed actually, but unsurprised to see Tanya Plibersek, the Federal Environment Minister, on the 7:30 ABC program, being asked whether she thought the sentence was excessive, and this is what she had to say. I won't comment on the sentence, but what I will say is that when people protest, they should abide by the law. What a disgrace. What a joke. Because you cannot protest within the law when the law is changed to prevent you from protesting. And politicians are changing protest laws in almost every state in Australia because they know their bedrooms and their workplaces and schools and join mass collective political action that our collective will can be unstoppable. And they're afraid of that. So it's no coincidence that they launched this offensive on the right to protest in New South Wales in a year where protests have started to quiet down. They couldn't do it in 2019 when there was the mass bushfire protests. They couldn't do it in 2020 when they tried to shut down the BLM, the Black Lives Matter protests. They tried to declare them illegal. 60,000 people came out and they retroactively declared that actually these protests are legal. That's what our power looks like when we come out en masse to fight for our rights. So now fighting for climate justice, fighting to oppose racist police, defending trans rights and any other question of social justice has also become a fight to defend civil liberties and the right to protest. Luckily, we do have recent successes in pushing back against anti-protest laws that we can look to that show the way forward. So the Black Lives Matter rallies are an excellent example in New South Wales, and likewise there was the Democracy is Essential Civil Liberties campaign, which refused to accept hypocritical restrictions on the right to protest in 2020 at a time when the rest of society was reopening. And it was only by continuing to protest in the face of anti-protest laws, coming out and being defiant and confident, that we were able to push these laws back, and they were repealed in New South Wales. So from the 8-hour day to weekends to Aboriginal land rights and gay marriage, our rights are won on the streets. And if these laws are going to be pushed back against the normalisation of these laws, we're going to have to keep coming out in solidarity with those being targeted.
Hope you're enjoying this.
So I'm proud to stand with Violet Coco.
Here in Adelaide.
Her fight is our fight. Solidarity to her and solidarity to all those around the world rallying for a world where people come before profit.
Hooray! People applauding that latest speech.
15 months for blocking roads. Unfair laws have got to go. 15 months for blocking roads. Unfair laws have got to go. 15 months for blocking roads. Unfair laws have got to go. 15 months
it's
for
interesting
blocking
that the New
roads.
South Wales Premier said that Violet Coco is threatening our way of life.
15 months for
She's
blocking
defending
roads.
our way of life. A way of life threatened by climate change.
Our next speaker
She's
is
sounding
Ronnie
the alarm.
Rees. Ronnie is a rebel with Extinction Rebellion, teacher, someone who's been arrested, someone who knows Violet Coco personally, so please make them welcome.
I'm sorry, I'm really nervous and I hate public speaking. Australia, I want to acknowledge that we hold this rally today on the stolen land of the Kaurna people. We acknowledge that this land was never ceded and acknowledge First Nations people's sovereignty and ongoing resistance against the destructive forces of capitalism and colonialism. These are the same forces that cause the climate and ecological emergency. We acknowledge and stand in solidarity with the Global South and all First Nations people around the world who lead the way in this resistance, who are most threatened by the effects of the climate and ecological crisis, and as for First Nations people here, are the most incarcerated people in the world. Shame! We acknowledge their resistance and stand in solidarity against the police brutality and judicial and political oppression perpetrated on First Nations people on their land. I've been participating in non-violent direct action with Extinction Rebellion for 3 years after deciding that I needed to do more than sign petitions and attend 2-hour rallies. This is how I've come to know Violet. She's a determined, courageous and staunch activist. She inspires me, and I'm sure many others here, with her unwavering commitment for this planet and every living being on it. She has put her life on hold to fight for a safe future for everyone, despite deep personal costs. After being sentenced to 15 months in prison, she was denied bail, and the magistrate deemed her a risk to the community. Despite the fact she remains non-violent during actions and arrests, and has spent the last 8 months complying with her oppressive house arrest bail conditions. We all know who the real risk to our community is: the ecocidal fossil fuel corporations, the governments that they pay, and the judicial system that uphold their fascist and oppressive regime. We will work together, organise and participate in direct action against this oppression. Showing your support here tonight is much appreciated, but really rallies like these aren't going to cut it. The police, fossil fuel executives and politicians love this kind of protest because they know we're leaving soon. That's why this is still legal. The best solidarity you can show, if you're able, is to join and support the thousands of people around the world who are committed to civil resistance. Thank you.
Thanks to Ronnie Reed, non-violent protester and friend of Violet Coco.
Free Violet Coco! Free Violet Coco! Free Violet Coco! Free Violet Coco! Free Violet Coco!
Substantial crowd here chanting in support of Violet Coco, imprisoned for 15 months.
Thanks, Ronnie. Next speaker is Rob Sims. Rob is a Greens member of the Upper House and a long-standing advocate for social justice, environment and many other issues here.
Thank you, friends, for coming out here tonight. It is so important that we stand here tonight in solidarity with Violet and in support of the right to protest. It's a fundamental right in our democracy. And, you know, if ever we needed a reminder that our democracy is being stacked in favour of vested interests, big corporations and fossil fuels, this is it. What has happened over in New South Wales is an absolute outrage, and it is an attack on our fundamental human rights. This was an assault on the right to protest that was waved through State Parliament with support of the two major political parties. That is disgraceful. The Greens stood against it and did everything they could to try and resist that law. And let me tell you, if the Labor Party here in South Australia gets any ideas, we will be fighting them tooth and nail to make sure that we do not follow the path of other states in attacking our fundamental right to protest. Now, let me say, some of the comments made by Premier Dominic Pelletier are absolutely ridiculous and absurd. I mean, his suggestion that it's appropriate to lock someone up because they've shut off a lane of traffic for 25 minutes I mean, what would he think of the Adelaide 500 here last week? It is acceptable to apparently shut down
Welcome,
the CBD
James.
when it comes to a celebration of gas guzzlers and fossil fuels, but it's not acceptable to protest the climate crisis. Well, the real criminals here aren't those Australians that are standing up and fighting for our climate and for a safer future for our children and those yet to come. It's those climate criminals that are continuing to exploit our environment and rip the resources out of our planet without paying their fair share. They're the people that should be facing justice, not those that are protesting. So if there are any moves by the Malinowskis Labor government here in South Australia to follow New South Wales down this path, we will be doing everything we can to resist that, and we stand with all those that are defending our right to protest here in this country. It's fundamental to our democracy and we cannot afford to lose it. Thank you.
Thanks to Robert Sims, member of the Upper House
This
here
is
in
not
South
a police
Australia.
state. We have the right to demonstrate. This is not a police state. We have the right to demonstrate. This is not a police state. We have the right to demonstrate. This is not a police state.
Uni Students for Climate Action,
This is not
with
a
their
police
great
state.
record of crowds chanting. Hi Susan, hope you're
Before I
enjoying.
introduce our last speaker
this
tonight, I just wanted to
protest.
give a quick plug for people to dig deep and donate to a couple of important causes. So there should be a couple of clipboards in the crowd, and there's one here, and that's with a QR code.
While we're waiting for our next speaker, let's look at the brilliant chalking done by Dots for Democracy. What a lovely display it always is.
Standing in solidarity with her, but unfortunately the legal
Recognition
fees
of our
sorted.
favourite local fossil
They
fuel
raised
company.
extra money, the rest will go back to paying legal fees to other climate activists. So
Not only our
to,
local fossil
please,
fuel company,
donate
but
generously to
one of
that.
the world's
There
largest
should also
companies
be a bucket going
polluting
around in the crowd somewhere
the
over
planet.
here, and that's for money as well for Uni Students for Climate Justice, who initiated this protest tonight. And yeah, we really want to hit the ground running next year. Have another
Seriously,
year of climate
Australia.
activism. I think
A serious
as people, the
message
speakers have said tonight, we
about
need to build
our
bigger,
democracy
more disruptive protests,
how it should
and that,
be
and that means
protected.
that unfortunately costs us money as well. So if you can spare any coins or money online, I really encourage you to donate to
Many
Violence
great
Legal,
messages here tonight.
fees, and also helping us to put on rallies. as
System
well.
change, not climate change, an important
Our last
point.
speaker tonight, unfortunately, we were going to hear from Claire O'Connor, legal advocate for Extinction Rebellion, who's just let us know that unfortunately she won't make it tonight. But our last speaker tonight is Tom Gilchrist. Tom's an activist with Uni Students for Climate Justice at Flinders Uni and a socialist activist. So yeah, please make him welcome.
A good lineup of speakers here tonight.
I'd also just like to start by acknowledging that we're meeting on Ghana land, that this land was stolen, it's never
Great
stolen,
support.
and it always was, and always will be.
Thanks, Selena. We will not be bystanders, as you say.
I just want to reflect upon a couple of things. Dominic Perrottet has said that protesters like Violet Coco are threatening our way of life, and I think what an absolute disgrace. What is threatening our way of life is when you have thousands of homes in New South Wales this year being destroyed by flooding. That's what disruption looks like. The people who are disrupting our lives are not heroes like Violet, who are standing up and fighting to preserve life, to preserve the planet, to be on a planet that's livable for ours and future generations. The people who are disrupting and threatening our way of life, they don't do it by going on roads, they do it in corporate boardrooms, they do it by handing out millions of dollars in subsidies into fossil fuel companies in parliaments like this one or in Canberra.
Welcome, Belinda.
They're the criminals, they're the ones that are disrupting us, and they're the threat to us here in Australia and to people around the world who are increasingly facing the brutal effects of climate change.
Good point. Climate criminals are the
So I
fossil
think
fuel
it's absolutely
industry.
important that we reject that we stand in solidarity with fighters like Violet Coco, and that we commit ourselves to being fighters against climate injustice, for putting our bodies on the line. We should be following in Violet's example in different ways. We should be hitting the streets, taking action to stand up against this unjust system. I just also wanted to comment, I'm really pleased looking around the rally and the crowd tonight to see representatives of so many different climate groups that we have differences of opinions, we have different approaches, our strategies and our tactics may vary, but we can come together to stand in solidarity with a fellow activist and say this is not right and we will not stand for that. And I think that's really important that we have those, we stand together in solidarity like that. So while I think our numbers are smaller than we would like right now, we know that there are thousands of people around Australia who have taken action around standing up for climate action over the last couple of years.
Welcome,
and
Susanna.
I think we really need to set our
Glad you could join us
into the next year of trying to rebuild that movement, trying to hit the streets again, trying to disrupt our cities to actually stand up for real action on climate change and not the jokes that we are sold, the greenwashing of targets decades into the future with no plans to actually achieve them. So thank you to everyone for coming out here tonight. I think it's really important that we are here to stand in solidarity with Violet Coco, with all victims of these anti-protest laws, and that we continue to fight for real action on climate change. Thank you very much.
Thanks to that last speaker for making those strong points.
Climate action, not repression. 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 Thank you, Tom, and all of our speakers. To echo some of those things Tom was ending on, yeah, I think it's really important we're here. Obviously, they're going after Violet Coco for a reason, and that's because protest does work. We know it works. We know disruptive protest matters, and we know that this is a measure designed to intimidate us, to drive us off the streets, to make our protests less effective, and to make sure that big business continues to profit from the climate crisis. And while Violet's locked up, the real criminals are walking free. As Tom said, the people in this building, the people in the high rises in the city. We know that, yeah, while Violet's locked up, those people will not face the consequences of their decisions and their actions. So that's why we need to keep coming out, to build the momentum that we know is possible. You know, so, yeah, as Tom said, sometimes it's dozens of us, sometimes it's 100 or so, but at other times we know there can be thousands of us to build back the momentum that there was in 2019 when we took on our other coal-loving Prime Minister. We went on strike, we shut down the city to demand climate action. So let's everyone here commit to coming out to the next protest, fighting until Violet's free, and fighting until we tear down the system that's putting the planet, its future at risk. So thanks everyone for coming out tonight.
Great applause and great support for this action. While you're here watching, don't forget the next wave of protests is for the Tour Down Under, one of the major international events on the cycling calendar. Climate protesters will be out protesting sports washing because the key sponsor for this international event, the Tour Down Under, is Santos, oil and gas giant, currently before the courts for drilling in the Barossa Basin north of Australia and failing to consult with the local people. Well, they did consult, they sent a couple of emails, made a phone call, and the court consequently halted their drilling. They claim that their project is still on schedule. If that isn't contempt of court, I don't know what is. We shall see. While a peaceful 25-minute protest earns 15 months of prison, Santos and its executives are claiming that they can get off scot-free, and they have the lawyers.
Please go for it. Send some support to Violet. Write whatever messages you want to. Send some support to other protesters. Rights and condemnation. The corporations are the
Would you like to give us some comments
Rights and
tonight,
condemnation
sir,
of
about why you're
are
here?
enacting these
Well, I'm here
anti-protest
because
laws. The Dan's
it's
got
crazy
caught
we lock
in
up
a-
people flipping roads, but we give money to fossil fuel companies to destroy the planet and kill us. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you. And thanks for being here. What brings you here tonight?
Oh, well, we're socialists. We think the issue with climate change is a direct result of capitalism. And what's happened to Violet Coco is basically the state tapping down on any and every effort of us to actually draw attention to who the real climate criminals are. And yeah, we will fight till the end to defend our rights to protest, to disruptive protest, because they know that it works. So yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Hope you've enjoyed the experience. Hello. Would you like to say a few words about your attendance at this protest tonight?
My husband and I are very happy that we attended. We support Violet's protest, and we're very happy to be here, and very happy that she's got some support tonight.
Thank you. Sorry. Lots of people chatting, enjoying this lovely evening, knowing that Violet Coco is at the moment in prison and not able to enjoy freedom. A lovely selection of badges here. And we have here a couple of attendees. Would you like to say a few words about your attendance here tonight at this demonstration?
Well, I think these laws are frightening, and the thought of them coming, well, them being anywhere in Australia is absolutely horrifying in terms of what that is saying about our democracy, the state that our democracy is in.
Thank you for attending and supporting those views. It does seem bizarre that this is such a mild and pleasant evening and we're here for such a serious and sad occasion. We hope that these protests will have an impact. So please get online, support the campaign to free Violet, make any points you can, support the fundraising campaign. If you can, write to her in prison, write to your local member, express your love and rage about this situation. So many people have made the connection between this imprisonment and the sacredness of our democracy and our right to protest. Thank you for watching. Good night, and look forward to seeing you on the streets.